much that fun modern day stuff. So thank you guys for taking some time to be here with us for our May meeting. All right, we're going to kind of go through our typical agenda. Got a few talking items of some elements that have come out of some calls recently. And then going to show off a little bit of the work that Morel has been doing on some disaster management stuff. So as always, an all-star list over here. Thank you guys. Won't make you all introduce yourselves. Hi, Danny. And
yeah, you want to listen?
So wanted to give some kudos. We saw SCAD got out there and went and did a home visit. Also anecdotally told of another county a little further out that was trying to arrange some home visits for their kiddos. So kind of exciting to see that possibility opening back up. So thank you, SCAD, for doing that. And then I also wanted to give a little bit of a delayed, but a shout out to Tim Kleinsorge, who was for a long time our STARS coordinator at Montgomery County and is now, I believe, at Callaway County as the training officer. And I know he's working on getting established out there, but just as always, good to see good people moving on and moving up through the system. So, speaking of outreach and things we're doing for our stars, we've heard about this for a few years, and we did finally manage to get some, let's go right there, some window decals for back windshields of cars for our families, so that a provider could ostensibly, walk up on a car and know that there's one of our kids in there. So we're going to work on distributing those to families. We have started handing them out already. Also, if any of my STARS coordinators were planning on doing home visits or seeing their families at a PR event or at the houses or anything like that, please let me know and we can drop some in the mail for you, so you can hand them out to families as well for that. I did want to talk briefly about a room for improvement. We are not going to go into great detail on a call that happened, other than to try and take away what I think are some of the learning lessons and talking points from it. Once again, I know I've kind of feel like talked a lot about our palliative care kids so far this year, but just another example of where we can have some room for improvement. Just a reminder that these patients are often on incredible amounts of pain medication, right? Like they're really trying to often manage some sort of sarcoma or some sort of issue that is causing them immense amounts of pain. That is quite an extensive list that, for example, one of our previous palliative patients was on. And this is not exactly a pain regimen that you want to completely undo. So unfortunately, in this case, just anecdotally, we have heard that, a crew walked into a room. It was not a crew anywhere near here involved in this call. But at least what the parents heard, I don't know what the medic said exactly, but something to the effect that you overdosed and you shouldn't have done that. You should have told the doctors never to give this amount of medication. A reminder, first of all, that your words matter and they last for a long time for some of these families. Secondly, like I get that if you're dealing with a surgical patient who just had their plantar fasciitis fixed and they're on massive doses, like maybe at that point you could have a slight question of, do you really need 400 milligrams of oxycodone? But we are dealing with a pretty extreme thing and not a common situation for most of us. So, unless you absolutely know that that's incorrect dosing, you probably shouldn't say that to that family. And you definitely should not immediately slam 2 milligrams of Narcan to undo whatever's going on that scene. So unfortunately, this patient that happened to experienced immediate withdrawals, started seizing, and we had a very unfortunate call outcome. So just some pointers and some takeaway. This is different than your street corner overdose. Even those guys, we're only supposed to wake up with Narcan spritzers, right? I get it if they're on the 4th floor and they weigh 800 pounds and your back hurts that day, that sometimes we wake them up a little further than that. But this is different than those calls. You just want to titrate back to adequate ventilation until you can figure out the situation and determine if we are in an end of life situation, or just that the patient did receive a little too much pain medication that day. So just some walking talking points for that one. This is an example of a plan where we had something written to that effect for the Narcan spritzer. So just remember that, you just monitor them, bring them back up till you can see them adequately ventilating, ideally with end-tidal, and that would probably be a better way to handle that call in that situation. Also wanted to talk just, this is really peds in general, not even specific to STARS, but just, we've had a lot of conversations with parents recently, and maybe understandably so, we've kind of come to the realization that a lot of them view the IO as absolutely barbaric, and it takes a lot to kind of coach them up and say like, no, this is actually a really valuable tool. And I kind of was thinking back to, to our days of IO rollout, and we've already discussed that, some of the challenges in the sizing of the needles. I think something else that stands out to me is it's something that I didn't receive a lot of coaching directly with the IO of like maybe how to talk to people about it. So maybe just consider that, putting that into training. I found that in sim training regarding peds, at least, and peds calls, it really does help to give some of your crews just those right words to say, like, hey, like, if your kid's critical, like this is a valuable resource. We're not able to get an IV access, but we need to treat them. However you want to coach that up, but there probably is some room to help some of our care providers like understand, how to say that to a parent so that it doesn't come across as just this horrible thing that parent never wanted to have happen. So just some food for thought on that. For our STARS numbers for the month, first of all, we got some really cool graphs from our IT team this week. Just getting to kind of visually show some of the growth we've all been feeling and experiencing for the last couple of years. So just that continued expansion and spread of STARS. So it's cool for me because I write lots of plans, and hopefully you guys kind of find it valuable as well. And then, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our Florida spread as well down there. So for April, we added 11 more kids to the program. So you can see currently 838 active as of this morning. Continue to see good spread. Obviously, we have Dr. Colvin in Florida now, but we're getting more and more plans written and pretty good geographic spread and approval by the MDs. And then still just kind of holding steady in the 600 to 800 range as far as logins and use, albeit I have noted we do have an increasing number of generic accounts in the application or the website, and certainly we encourage that. So I'm okay if the numbers trend down as long as we're getting effective use out of people logging in. Shout out to all my dispatch agencies in Collinsville for continuing to rock the top of this list. So thank you everybody on that. And then emergency activations, just a few extra here in April, but you can see 51 people tapped yes, they were accessing for an emergency. And we had 12 dispatches in the month of April. 27 transports. So kind of a good mix of some of our rural kids still by a private vehicle to a closer hospital, but then the transport teams or local EMS were transporting from there. We have started to count those. As well, especially because if the plan was accessed, and we have been working with our access center to have our kids plans sent to our transport teams as well on this side. So, and then one refusal that we knew of that was reported to us, it was a little post-ictal seizure kiddo that JAPE had handled. I will say that there is one more that's not on here. And it's worth talking about just because there's a quick talking point about it. I think it's not on here because we hadn't received the trip sheet yet. But we have, once again, maybe going back to my Narcan overdose second talking point of like kind of who are you sometimes. We did have a crew run on the kid the first day and diagnose and determine themselves that the kid probably just had an upper respiratory infection and just needed to go to the store for some allergy meds and maybe a steroid or something. On a certain percentage of the time, you're going to be right, but that's not really always your call to make. That kid was transported the next day and was in full respiratory failure by the time they arrived here at our doors at Glennon. So, I don't feel like I have to continue beating the drum on pediatric refusals and the sheer danger that's involved in call situations that you guess at, but aren't always, you don't have the diagnostic tools to fully diagnose. So just a cautious warning that it's not always as simple as what it looks like in front of you, especially in our kids that really require lots of positioning to maintain a good airway or a good patent airway. So back off that soapbox for a few minutes. Anyways. And then, like I said, I wanted to give a shout out to Marilla, who's been working really hard with our IT team, and Pam doing different reporting and working on our Power BI. And we've kind of talked about this intermittently throughout the year, but this is something we continue to work on, where we want to be able to provide, reports, especially in cases of disaster or anything like that, like where are your high-risk kids at in your community. So this is an example of a report that they're working on that's coming down the pipeline, where you could see, so total all stars, we have 355 kids that qualified at some level because of their medical equipment for some disaster level. And I'll show you what we group those as here in a minute. An example of how this would work though. So for instance, say something happened in Southeast Missouri, we can slice the pile down to just the Southeast region. If we really wanted to focus just on like critical medical equipment versus maybe lower level medical equipment, and you can start to find those kids. And then if you hit these drop downs, I didn't just because the kids' names are all in there, but it actually will just give you a list of all the stars in that region at that medical equipment level. So just continue to really see some cool advantages coming out of all the data tracking that Marilla has been working on. This is just the kind of the list that we determined and came up with, just to give you guys a sense of where those levels come from for our kids in the Power BI. But we really focused on like the kids who need immediate help if the power is cut or something, is going on, versus kids where maybe you got a day or two, but they're going to need power. You're going to need to check on them, but they're not quite as time critical. Same thing for medium, just a little bit more. They might run out of medication supplies or some supplies they need within a few days to check on them. And then the lower level, a lot of times, a lot of those kids are just the ones with sensory impairment or some sort of movement impairment. If you have a prolonged ongoing FEMA level disaster, yes, like you might need to check on these kids within a week. But the other side effect of that category is that also gives us the kids who would still need to be evacuated if heaven forbid, forest fires or huge, large situation is going on. These are kids who still might be a difficult move. So kind of knowing about them in your community. So that's just some of the disaster side that we've been working on. Cool. And then just a reminder that the STARS LMS is up and available. And let's see, I can leave it on that screen today. So I got some feedback last time that people still need the QR code. There are the 2 courses and a third coming shortly. So, and then we'll just continue to as time goes on. So
yeah. Look who's here. Look who's here.
Are you talking to me, Miss Lindsay?
Danny made 2.
All right, so that was everything I had for the planned meeting. I see I'm back to being on time as opposed to how I started the year. So were there any questions? No worry, Dr. Cookies.
Yeah, Nick. Duncan and I had a question. If there is any advisable doses for Narcan within the STARS plans for those high dose kids?
So I don't think we've written it into any of them. Do you sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah, Trish says she does. So
Okay.
Do you ever like dilute it out?
Yeah, we've had it. Dr. Laffey's given me. Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah, we did do that for our for the one guy who we had talked about. I'd be honest with you, I'd have to go back and look at it because I can't remember exactly what we came up with. I mean, it's a titrate to effect kind of thing. I think we did have did we have a dilution? Is that what we decided to do to give it kind of low? I think
There was a regimen that we wrote to titrate to normal ATCO2.
Yeah, I think that, again, the thing is they don't necessarily even, this is not a situation, as Nick was saying, that you really need to necessarily wake them up even,
Yeah, the whole.
have them breathing. Which is why the CO2 and that are super important, because it's not necessary. The more you get to actually waking them up, the more likely you're gonna end up having issues. So I think that's kind of what the gist of it was. I can't remember what we actually, it seems like it was a fairly long time ago, but I know we spent some time digging in. And we looked at a couple of different references that people had, as I recall too, and tried to come up with something that seemed reasonable to do. Whether that would work. And I think Trish and I just talked about this the other day, whether we should go back and look at that and kind of have that as like the standard boilerplate kind of way to look. We'll have to look back at that. I'll have to look back at that record and see what we put down. Maybe I can dig back into my emails and see where, I think we had, like I said, I think we had done a little bit of research and looked for some data on it, as I recall.
What I,
We appreciate it. We were just asking.
Yeah, it's an inexact science, obviously, for sure.
Right.
No question.
also, I'll pause the recording here in a minute, but I will unpause it so that we can put something up on the screen at the end of the video, and I'll put it up on YouTube and send it to you, Danny, and we'll get a screen cap or something like that.
I appreciate it.
Cool. Yes, Miss Amanda, I will send that out via email. Awesome. Were there any other questions or comments from the crowd this morning? Awesome. All right. Well, as long as nobody's too upset, we'll gift you with 12 minutes of your life back. And thank you, everyone, for your time this month, and we look forward to seeing you next month.
See you guys.
Thanks, Nick.